April 7th at 2:30. Due to distance, health, and safety concerns, members of the public are not in attendance at this meeting. However, full access to this meeting is being provided by a medium of interactive communication. This virtual medium will provide members of the public without cost the ability to listen using teleconferencing as available. The agenda for this meeting has been posted on the Kansas Public Square website and may be requested by emailing the Kansas African American Affairs Commission office at kaaac.ks.gov. Each member of the commission staff and guests will state their name and title each time they begin speaking or voting so that the individuals can be readily identified by remote listeners. All participants are required to ensure that microphones, telephones, or electronic devices are muted when not speaking so that the ability of remote listeners or observers to hear the meeting is not unnecessarily impeded. A public comment opportunity will be provided at the beginning of each commission meeting, following the roll call and the chairman's opening comments. During this meeting, the commission will not recess to a closed executive session pursuant to KSA 7543-19. Each motion, if any, will be clearly stated and restated before the commission, and the chairperson will announce the results of the final vote. Commissioners and guests, please note that this meeting is being recorded. Thank you and welcome to the Kansas African American Affairs Commission meeting. I will now take roll call. Dr. and Commissioner Lewis.
Present.
Commissioner Jonathan Westbrook.
Present.
Are there any other commissioners that I cannot see on my screen who are present? I will defer my comments till later in the meeting. I will open the floor to any public comment, and if there is no public comment, I will turn the floor over to our executive director, Stacy No.
Hi, everybody. This is Stacy. There's no members of the public here, except I do have a special guest that I want to take a second to introduce. It's Troy Spain. He's the executive director of the Kansas Civic Engagement Table. And I brought him here today because of some new business. Since we don't have quorum, this is going to just be really relaxed at this point. I won't try to be super formal about things. I am hoping to start a project of power mapping the Black community in an actual formal structural kind of way. Ever since I've gotten this job, the question has continued to come to me, how do we reach the Black community? I was hired at the height of COVID, so there was the state had a lot of information about the virus, about vaccines, about testing units, about, pop-up clinics, traveling nurses, the whole slew. And the question always came to me, how do we reach the Black community? I didn't have a good answer. I've been in a lot of meetings with David Tolan and Paul Hughes at Commerce, at the Department of Commerce. And they're like, there's money coming down for entrepreneurs and for startup businesses. How do we reach the Black community? I don't have a good answer. All kinds of, if it's health initiative, if it's commerce initiatives, there are a lot of things that have come to me where the state very astutely recognizes that they have a blind spot in reaching the Black community. They have the same blind spot with reaching the Hispanic community. I've always said that with the Hispanic community, there is at least one more obvious answer, that be translate everything to Spanish and get it out to Spanish language media. But quite frankly, the entire Spanish, Latino population doesn't speak Spanish. So there's a lot of similar questions. However, Aude Negrete, when she was the ED of KAAC, had worked with Troy to do a lot of work with power mapping the Hispanic community. So when COVID hit, she could identify a lot of people and get information out. And we saw that with vaccination rates. The Hispanic community was vaccinated at rates comparable to the white community, whereas the African American community continuously lagged behind. Now I kind of have my feet underneath me. Now that I'm kind of figuring out what this job actually means, I feel like this is something that I would like to do, to actually put the work in, to be able to see as much as we can do about power mapping the Black community for whatever that may entail. And I think this is something I would like to enlist the help of the commission on, because you all know people in your various communities that I don't know. So that's why I brought Troy on. Troy had helped with Aude years ago to do this work. This is a project that, just given the nature of it, is probably not ever going to be done. So rather than working on towards a point of us being done with this, I'm actually thinking of it more a point of a time frame. Like, well, let's give it 3 months and see how much we can get done. And then, of course, as things come up, we'll add to it, because it's never going to be completely done, if that makes any sense. So that's why Troy is here. And I think I'm going to let Troy do his little spiel and take as much time as he needs to, and then I'll do any kind of executive update at the end, so just to be cognizant of Troy's time. Troy.
I think Mark had something. Stacy, I'm sorry.
And this is for Troy. This is Mark McCormick, the chair. Can you make a distinction between power mapping and faction mapping, or are those things the same?
Similar. A lot of it is semantical. Let me see if I used to have a little guide. The major difference on faction mapping is generally where you start. So that is central stuff. Usually with a faction map, you would have a single overarching thing that is sort of the homogenization of it. What we see a lot is the term community mapping or asset mapping or power mapping or faction mapping. It really depends on how you're kind of breaking down that first initial piece of it. And I'll get into that here. I've got a couple of slides I'll show you guys here that might give some understanding of like what makes community asset mapping a little different. So if you don't mind, I'll tear into that and then I'll answer questions here toward the end. So perfect. Let me see if I can get my screen to share nicely like it did when I was practicing here. So assuming that came up for everybody. Excellent. So again, my name's Troy Spain. I am the executive director of the Kansas Civic Engagement Table. Like Stacy mentioned, I have done power and asset mapping in the state for a few years now. I graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder with a specialization in transforming communities after I got my business degree at Kansas State University. That specialization really taught me how to identify community assets, and I've really focused on using that to give groups that traditionally don't have the same power or access a key into like what the structures of their communities are that they can take advantage of. Let's see here. So community mapping, sometimes called asset mapping, faction mapping is very similar, is all about involving residents and identifying the assets of their neighborhoods or their communities, looking at opportunities and creating a picture of what it is to live where they live. We're looking at the whole state of Kansas, and specifically with you guys with the African American community. When we did this with the Hispanic community, a lot of that was built around exercising that work into the power bases that they have, but they're going to look very different when you start from a different angle. So it's a valuable way to sort of gain community engagement, because once you have those maps and those structures kind of in your head and in a document that you can reference, you can then add people and contacts and organizations to those that sort of hang off of each of those components. And you can use that moving forward to do any kind of work. It reminds me a lot of PTAs and sort of the like phone chain kind of thing that a lot of PTAs have, where they'll call like one person from each family, and then they each call 2 people. And this kind of mapping that we're talking about, the larger community mapping for the state, would be similar to that, where you would find central groups or community centers or individuals that are highly connected in their communities. They would then provide more information for the groups that they are involved with. So for a long time, and this is, I think, where faction mapping kind of broke off to, the focus of most governmental interventions, organizational interventions, has been around looking at what is the deficit in a community and then trying to address said deficit. Okay, whether that is a communications deficit, whether that is a transportation deficit, whether that is just an access point deficit, whether that is like physical needs like food, shelter, community center, school, those kinds of things. So a lot of that was really geared toward what is wrong with the community in general, right? And asset mapping is really the opposite of that. So once you kind of get past that, you start looking at like what the potentials are and that kind of thing. But asset-based community development seeks to rebalance the views of folks by cataloging the things that are of value and already exist, that are already in play, so that you can see the power that a community already has, and then utilize that moving forward to get things that the community itself determines are of worth. Every physical community is going to have assets. They're going to have libraries, community centers that they use. They're going to have valued business partners that they work with. They're going to have like this goes into like parks and forests and all kinds of things. And in the state, there are probably places in cities that are predominantly parks that are visited by predominantly African American citizens, right? There's going to be neighborhoods that are predominantly owned by African American folks. There are going to be places that, because of the history of our state, that those places are like prohibitive to African Americans. And what this will do is sort of identify where those places of power are, and then let us sort of see into that. And a lot of that is done through questions, right? You're going to dig into three major kinds of assets. So you've got individual assets, community assets, and institutional assets. This is kind of like a little word tree, and I'll include all these slides and things. I'll send all this to Stacy so you guys can take a closer look at all of it. But things like schools and housing, businesses, shelters, centers, church power. There's individual groups and like what those folks can bring to the table. So skills and organizations and creativity and life experience that they have can all add to the strength of a community. And then there's also like just social groups and community groups. There's going to be charitable groups that operate within said communities. There's going to be grants that are written specifically to target those communities, and all of those we can identify one part at a time. So here's an example of what I've used in the past. This one on the left here is just a simple questionnaire. It is really meant to get folks thinking about what they know about their community, and to really dig down into like what that means for them and how that can be used. It lets you sort of map those onto a grid to see like where they would fall in a community asset map. And then this is the beginning on the right-hand side of one that I've begun building for the African American community in the state. It is by no means all-inclusive. It is truly just a fragmented piece of the puzzle. I've gotten to work with some awesome folks. Stacy has helped me with this, and she's let me pick her brain. Carrie Gooch was one of the ones that really got into it with me at the very beginning. And we were able to map out just some institutions and things. I'll bring up, this is a zoomed in part of it. So each one of these nodes, we'll talk about like statewide nonprofits, and then we start writing in the names of those folks. What you can then do is link into each of these nodes the contact information for those folks, who works there, who volunteers with them, their phone numbers, emails, things that they provide publicly. And we can build out sort of a interactive map that you guys can use. This one specifically like breaks off fraternal organizations and runs through them. Appears like the legislative and political groups, so like the Democratic Caucus, the Republican Caucus, KAAC itself, the African American Affairs Caucus. Like, so there's a ton of different groups in the state that operate in these, and they may need to be moved around. There's also times where places are collaborating, and there's ways in the software that I use, the Node software, to like link folks together. So on the Hispanic map, for instance, we have organizations doing collaborative efforts that all feed into another C3. And so there are arrows that sort of, as you zoom in, they will show you where those interactions already exist. So if you were to try to get information about, say, Kansas Aldea, it would first route you to Juntos and then link in KAAC and all the other groups that are kind of tied into that over time. So once you've got kind of that basic map built and you've started identifying all the folks that people are connected to and what they want to do with that information and what's important to share, you have to kind of decide what you want to do with that next piece. A lot of communities, once they build these, they make physical maps where there's interactive physical maps, which is something that we can do in ArcGIS. I've had groups that just like the LGBTQ group that I work with built a just a spreadsheet that is just a database of information so that we can share that from group to group. There are ways to sort of map out shared calendars, share them on websites with community groups. So if one of the groups that we identify wants to host that informational stuff, you can have shared calendars where people can submit from the community information that would be helpful. There's also, like to Stacy's point, where we were talking about adding more and more information over time. A lot of things that people do is they collect this data from the community itself by putting that as an available way to like add information. So they would submit an email or submit some sort of form that would then update the community map, and that would be the map, the calendar, all those kinds of things. It's hard to automate all that because you don't want people on the back end sort of having access to the entirety of the map at once, but there's a lot of ways to kind of coordinate that data and get it in a pretty simplistic way. So that's just something to think about in the overall. I hope that's helpful in kind of giving you an idea of what the thing is. I think the next big piece would be identifying a time where you guys, if you were interested in either sitting down individually with me or in a group setting, it needs to usually be in person, just because there's so much interactive stuff. We have to actually move post-it notes and things to get kind of a feel for what the map should look like and what things are. It's really difficult to do online, but I'm happy to try and do that as well. I have done that with post-it notes and things behind me on a board and talking to people and just working through it that way. So if there's interest in any of that, if there's interest in one-on-one adding to this map that we're building, there's nothing more that I want than to just turn this over to groups that will use it and get out of the way. So on that, I will ask for questions because I know that's a lot of stuff to cover in a very short amount of time. So
Cool. So yeah, thank you. I'm emailing my intern because hoping to be able to introduce her, but she's having trouble with the Zoom link. That's the long and short of it. And I think I had Troy come on today to sort of do an introduction of this project, because at one point the April meeting was supposed to be in person. And to his point, this is something that might be easier done in person. And I know we had talked as a commission about doing quarterly meetings in person, and that has yet to happen. So I wanted to have Troy on to sort of give an overview of, hey, this is the project, this is what it might be. It would be easier to accomplish in person. Just to give you guys a heads up as to what I would like to do maybe over the span of the summer, and to see and to throw it out again. Can we try to meet in person? I know, in last November or December, we talked about meeting in person once quarterly and it just hasn't happened. So is it, that's just pretty much, that's the long and short of it. But any questions for Troy? Mark has a question. Oh wait, hang on, Mark. Hang on, Mark. Hang on. I muted you because there was some noise coming in, so you have to unmute yourself.
Oh, apologies. Yeah, this is kind of a crass question, but it does strike me that this information in the aggregate could be really valuable. When I worked at the museum, we used to consider our mailing list as something proprietary. And because I was a new museum person, the people who ran the more established museums, tried to hustle me out of my list. So my question is, how have other groups dealt with the proprietary aspects of this, the value of it? Is it something that is just completely open sourced, or are there organizations that cordon it off and protect it as the foundation of how they contact constituents?
I mean, I think security and just holding on to one's value is really important. There's nothing in here. The general consensus is if you're going to have something that is forward-looking and open, that you want that to be as public as possible. But what that does is it limits the kinds of information that you can have available, right? In general, we only put forward-facing emails, forward-facing phone numbers, those kinds of contacts that would get people in the door if they knew that an organization exists, but it wouldn't give them proprietary information to know on the back end, like someone's personal email or private cell phone number. We do have had people who've identified themselves as leaders in a community that wanted to be contacted directly, and they have been listed out. But generally, we're looking for public-facing information that will let people inform the next step decisions. It wouldn't necessarily be something that immediately sort of gained them sort of private access. It would give them an idea of the scope and of the kinds of things that exist in an area, far more than it would give them the details of how to get into that community. That would be their job to do. And that goes for this, that goes for commissions, that goes for anyone. And what you choose to do with that data is 100% on, open to you guys. Everyone I've talked to, like when we did the KAAC one, they decided they wanted an open sort of side where everything would be kind of exposed. That information was given to them to do with what KAAC wanted to do. They shared that through some of their community partners, but none of that, like I said, had like private phone numbers, that kind of thing. On the LGBTQ side, it's a little more difficult. So what we actually do is, like I said, keep a database that actually runs through the LGBTQ Foundation. That database exists and then does not have any doesn't have any public access points. So, but if someone wanted to know someone, they could be linked in with them by contacting that foundation and then getting that information sort of shared to them one-on-one as they were sort of screened through the process. And some of it's safety, some of it's, just like you said, protecting something that's valuable to folks. So.
This is
Go
ahead.
This is Commissioner McCormick again. I apologize for the noise, but it sounds like to me that what we'd create together would be something pretty general. And if we wanted to create something that dug in deeper, something that would have more proprietary value, we could do that on our own once the infrastructure's built.
Yeah, 100%. When I turn this stuff over, it's all open source. I let the group who designs it and functions with it, I give it all to them, and then however they choose to use that in the future is 100% theirs.
Yeah, Commissioner McCormick, again, I was thinking about our organizing team, for example. If we had access to them in terms of like an email blast, if candidates had access to this, they could micro-target constituents in a particular area, after a lot of work is done, obviously. I just see a lot of value down the road if we choose to invest in it that way.
Well, this is Stacy, and I would say that for me, looking at this project moving forward, it's nice that it perhaps has this ability to be public knowledge. I don't envision this being public knowledge. That was not the intent. I mean, if any, yeah. And definitely not for candidates, because that would be political, and we kind of operate like a 501c3. So this is not information that if a candidate approached me and said, "Hey, can I get something?" that wouldn't be it. I
was just trying to articulate the value of it. That was all.
Oh no, it's very valuable. And if anything, I think given where KAAC sits in relationship to the state government, it would be like I said, if the Department of Commerce has come to me and said, these opportunities are coming, how do we find the Black community? The KDHE has come to me and said, there's a public health crisis. We need to reach the Black community. So if anything, I can see this being that KAAC is a state agency being helpful to the state government, but it would not necessarily be helpful. And that's why I want to discuss this. And we haven't started this yet, right? Troy is just here to do the introduction. We're in the discussion phase. I have this idea, I'm in the idea stage. So So I have made no decisions about how the information will be gathered, stored, or used, right? I mean, quite frankly, I need to have some conversations with IT and because like audit may be too strong of a word, but they ask me about what am I doing in public with personal PII, personal identifying information. So to your point, Mark, like there's some work on my end to make sure that if I'm gathering information on people, where am I keeping it? How am I using it? And so the state, being that we are still a state agency, is going to have much to say about me gathering this type of information. So I just want to toss that out there in terms of where we are with it. Dr. Lewis.
Yes, this is Commissioner Lewis. Thank you, Troy, for this presentation. I do understand that part of the process is involving the residents or those community members in determining the assets. And so rather than us sitting in a room, I guess that's part of the process. How do we as commissioners get to our communities to have those conversations about what is an asset in this community before we get in a room and start identifying assets on our own? Or am I missing something there in terms of the process?
So this is Troy again. What I'll say to that is it looks however you want it to look. What I think Stacy was envisioning was sort of a multi-step process where you would first do it yourselves, so you understood kind of the ins and outs of that, and then potentially either do that in smaller communities or in specific groups that maybe you're part of to get more information that then would be fed in as well. And that doesn't have to only live in sort of the KAAC world. That can be folks that want to add more data, that kind of stuff. Yeah, I like I said, everything that I've collected previously has all been public facing information. It wouldn't be anyone's private info, things that they don't list out on websites and things. We get into a really weird gray area with a lot of information because like my personal cell phone is on the web, right? Like you could email me tomorrow from my website and I would get it directly on my phone. So like there's a lot of folks that are much more comfortable with like access points than others. And so you want to be respectful of like not just listing something that someone hasn't told you that they're comfortable with you listing out. But I think there's a lot of groups and places that would be willing to put their data together. But yeah, reaching out to the people who are on the list or who get identified as potential community partners or organizations, that's a really great second and third step, right? You just sort of keep adding down the line as you sort of push things in, and someone might later on find a new division or a new thing that you weren't thinking about that adds a bunch of categories, and that can all be updated and added in as well. But this would give you the bones of like the bones of a plan that then you could move forward with however you wanted to flesh out. So
right, this is Stacy. So like for example, he showed you that little sketched spider thing of the branches, right? That was because he and Carrie Gooch and Glenda Overstreet Vaughn just sort of sat down one day, and the NAACP, the links, all the Black Greeks, the Council of Elders, the three of them just sort of sat down and came up with that. So I looked at it and it's like, well, there's a couple of things that I know about, like, the Black farmers or, BIPOC farmers of Wichita. Like there's a couple other groups like TCAM. Like there were some things that I knew about that weren't on that list. And so now the next stage is, okay, and these are not like individuals. These are not people, right? But there's Storytime Village. Let's put Storytime Village on that list, right? It's not, they're not in it. They're community activism. I don't know what I might need to know Priska Barnes's information for, but there's organizations like that quite frankly, you probably just know of in the Lawrence area that I don't know of, just because you're so connected in the Lawrence area, that you would just know of it. So this idea of, so three people sat down and brainstormed and came up with that much of a map. I can add some stuff to it. So if we get the 7 of the commissioners together and flesh out the map, and then my intern, she was having trouble logging in. We'll have to figure that out on Monday. I just gave that printed out list of the map to her, and we don't have the software yet because I haven't put any money into this or anything like that, and started to do this forward-facing stuff. Does this organization have a website? Does this organization have a Facebook page? Just general, if we needed to contact this organization, I don't know why she's okay. You know, if we needed to contact this information, could we find this information? So that's kind of the stage we're at right now. Just the bare bones. So in you know, Jonathan Westbrook, in the Wyandotte County area, you know, this might be, if any organizations you guys are in, if they're predominantly Black, and for this, I am going with predominantly Black, or at least set up to serve the Black community, because this is the one time in my life when I get to just be blackity black, and I'm okay with that, right? But, you know, are there organizations that you're aware of in your community that, because I don't live there, it just wouldn't cross my mind? That's kind of where we're at.
And if it's useful here, I'll share my screen again if I can get it to. This is Troy again. Sorry. Let's see. Sorry, now I got too many screens going here. So this was the original map that we made for KAAC that really, let's see if I can zoom this guy in. Nope. Doesn't want to play. But it really just broke things out geographically first, and then there were just organizations in those neighborhoods and areas that specifically we wanted to dig more into. Then we listed out all the Latinx grocery stores that we were going to try to contact for certain amounts of information. That's all public facing information. It's all stuff we could grab off Google. But all of these links specifically would go into their Facebook pages and things. It's all dead now because it's not, I don't have my computer hooked up, but that was phase one. And then that turned into something similar to this one for them. If I can find it. There it is. Nope, that's the old one too. So then this is the one that got to be more elaborate. And this one specifically like digs into like forward facing phone numbers. There's Facebook links embedded. These crosshairs are those connections between groups that I was talking about. But none of that's really private information, right? That's all stuff that if you had an infinite amount of time on Google, you could go and find. What this does is it saves a considerable amount of time if you were to go, like Stacy said, be given a potential grant or be given a potential resource or given a potential like educational awareness campaign or whatever it is by the state, then you would be able to then use this to very quickly identify geographically or by type of facility, those kinds of things, where you want to put that effort. And then you'd have a first sort of response piece to that. It wouldn't give you the in-depth. You may have to look up like who's in charge of this and then find who those connections are on the back end. So it's really meant for that kind of outreach. So.
Any other questions? Jonathan?
No, I don't have any questions. Just thank you for the work that you're doing, and it's definitely going to be a valuable asset to KAAC.
Cool. Well, if there's no other questions, Troy, I'll be in touch because I think, and then maybe we can look at either maybe the next meeting or if we ever do an in-person meeting, we'll make sure to invite you to that, and you know we'll start the work in earnest, and it'll give me a chance to catch everyone else up as well. And because I was trying to say, without having nope, wrong screen. Or wait, what can you see? Can you see
A spreadsheet?
A spreadsheet? Right. So this is, like I said, I have a intern. So I said, hey, here's the thing. Do they have a website? Do they have a Facebook? Do they have an Instagram? And so she started to, you know, fill this out. Right. So this is the type of thing that I'm talking about, trying to figure out who's where and what do they do. Is there an easy way to find them in case as these opportunities come down the pike? The two ones that obviously come to my mind are either health health issues and commerce issues, because those are the two things that I keep finding myself in the area with. But yes, if it's education, if it's grants, as we get, and I'm definitely interested in the rural areas, because there are Black people out there. I just don't know, outside of the Black Farmers Association, you know, how do we reach them? Because there are grant opportunities available for people still recovering from COVID, all that type of information. Okay. So thanks, Troy. I won't hold you. And I will definitely be in contact.
Fantastic. Thanks for taking the time with me, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you. So that's pretty much, that's the long and short of what I hope to do moving into the summer. Any thoughts?
Commissioner McCormick, that's a good idea, Stacy.
Thanks.
The question now be, how much are we going to develop it? And how can we help, for instance, African American businesses, with this information?
Well, it's more, this is Stacy. I mean, I think it's more, well, it depends. Again, I'm coming at this all from the standpoint of KAAC effectively functions like a state agency. So for example, I know about an organization in Wyandotte County called the Black Mastermind Group. There's one out in Manhattan called the Black Entrepreneurs of the Flint Hills. And then there's a group in, well, there's Christina Long in Wichita. And then there's a group here in Topeka with Michael Odubitan called Omni Circle. And they all kind of do the same work. They do the work of getting Black entrepreneurs ready to get to the next level, right? So commerce has, without exaggeration, millions of dollars of opportunities coming to the state. And a lot of times when these companies come in, they're coming in with DEI targets. They want to hire Black people, brown people, vets, the whole nine. So what has happened, that's what I mean. David Tolan will pull me into his office and say, opportunity XYZ is coming, where are the Black people? And I'm like, holy crap.
This is Commissioner McRoy. Are we engaging with the Heartland Black Chamber to see if we're missing any key stakeholders for this?
Well, when I tell you I'm at the beginning stages of this, I'm at the beginning stages of this. Like, I know Kim Randolph with the Heartland Black Chamber. So the simple answer is we will. But that's just one example of when I say that on a state agency, someone will pull me in and say, we want to get this information to the Black community. How do we get it out? So yes, the commerce thing, the Heartland Black Chamber is aware of it, but what I'm finding, and this is not going to come to a surprise to anyone, is that across the state, the Black community works in silos. We've heard this a lot. The community works in silos. Quite frankly, when I got Omni Circle, Black Entrepreneurs of the Flint Hills, and Mastermind together, they kind of knew of each other, right? But they kind of didn't know of each other. So it took me kind of with this 30,000 foot view to go, hey, you guys are all doing the same thing. Like, they knew of each other, but now they can work together to try to make their impact even greater. So I'm like, is there someone like this in Pittsburgh? Is there someone doing this work in Hayes? Right? Like, I don't know. It would be helpful for me to know, because I set up a meeting with the three of them and Paul Hughes at Commerce. And there's, when I tell you opportunities are coming to Kansas, it should not surprise you. But now they're in on the ground level of discussing how money gets, they're in at the ground level of discussing this money that's coming in to make sure that there are Black people. I'm trying to get as many Black people in every single room as I can. But in order for me to get Black people in the room, I have to know where they are. That's the long and short of it. So, I mean, I'm like, oh my gosh, if these people, like the Flint Hills one, I was like, holy mackerel. She's doing work out there in Manhattan. I was like, what if there's one of you in Hayes? Do you know? Like, I asked her, like, is there someone doing this work in Hayes? Is there one of you in Pittsburgh? Is there one of you in Emporia? like, Like, these are the kind of things I want to know. Like, where are the people who need to have access to different things? How can we find them? How can we help them? Because I'm like, all right, full disclosure, a lot of people come to me and say, are you going to do another State of Black Kansas report? And I'm like, has that helped anybody, the State of Black Kansas report? I don't know. But given the conversations that I get dragged into, and if I can drag 5 more Black people in the room who actually know what, like, my background is in art history. So don't get me in a commerce conversation, but if I can bring business people in, that would be helpful. Jonathan Westbrook.
Hey, this is Commissioner Westbrook. So I guess what comes to mind initially is possibly creating or having KAAC, and this being like a living document that can be edited throughout the process. And then we use our key stakeholders throughout the state as a means like pulling this information in. And then from that point, we can connect them if that's at all possible. I don't know what the workload looks like for KAAC, for you, any assistance, but we have key stakeholders in all these positions. And so if we are the source of information for the state, we're not taking any type of political leanings or anything like that. We're just becoming a source of information to these resources. And so if that's somewhat feasible for us, I would recommend, or that's what comes to mind first in regards to how we are able to really make this resource available and effective for outreach.
Yes, I agree. This is Stacy. Hang on, I'm taking notes. No, that's from where I sit in this office. It is that, for example, Nicodemus has a revitalization effort, and they are serious about it. They're organized and they're working on revitalizing Nicodemus. But they didn't realize that there was a program, again, through Commerce, through the Department of Rural Prosperity, where they literally have grant writers, and they had one, like, these people are grant writers who have been hired by the Office of Rural Prosperity to help small people in the whole nine, right? Like, again, this is not my background. But if I go, oh, Office of Rural Prosperity, oh, Nicodemus, oh, Black farmers, oh, and then I can connect those people, then now they have grant writers. But the Office of Rural Prosperity and Nicodemus's revitalization group didn't know that the other one existed until I was like, hey, you guys need to know each other. Because like Nicodemus, the people were telling me, oh, we need to talk to Governor Kelly. I'm like, Governor Kelly can't help you, but the Office of Rural Prosperity has people who are hired specifically to write grants for small towns in rural Kansas who are trying to get, water hooked up. Governor Kelly, that's not what she does, right? But there is an Office of Rural Prosperity. That's their reason for existing. That's going to be more helpful to you than yelling at Governor Kelly. That's not what she does, for lack of a better phrase. Okay. It's 3:15. That's so put all that in your back pocket. We're going to revisit this. And like Troy said, this is work that, because, he was talking me through it, and it's like Post-it notes and a map of Kansas and who's where, and, these people, do they know this person? Who do you know here? Who do you know there? It's literally just trying to figure out who do we know where. It would be easier done in person. So we need to revisit this idea of maybe having an in-person meeting. That seems to be difficult for this group to accomplish. I will do a brief update, and then we can call it a day, since we don't have a quorum. We can't vote on anything. Lunch and Learns are still continuing, and they're still up on YouTube and Facebook. I'm trying to drive people to the YouTube just because it helps algorithms and all that stuff. But even if you don't watch it, if you can share it on your personal networks or whatever, that'd be fantastic. I made reference to that meeting where we had with the Black business incubators and the Department of Commerce. Again, that's just the type of stuff where if I find something's going on and I know enough Black people who are working in that space, I just try to set up meetings with people who need to know each other exist to help out where I can. We did have most recently a town hall, and I put that in quotes because it wasn't like an open to the public town hall. It was a collaboration between KAAC and the Department of Child Advocate to talk about child welfare issues. Specifically, we're focused on Sedgwick County. Mark agreed to moderate, and he did an excellent job.
Mark agreed?
Mark agreed.
Okay,
You didn't disagree.
I was voluntold.
Mark was asked and he graciously accepted the job of moderating, and he did an excellent job. I will hold to that. There were about 30 people in attendance. And we ran it like a lot like we did the KAAAC town hall, where we had cards. People, if they asked questions, they had to submit cards, which went a long way towards controlling how the conversation went. It was so well received that they requested us to do another one. So we're sort of looking at, I believe it's July, is it July 22nd? The date is escaping me right now. But we set a date.
Yeah, I think it was the 29th.
Something like that.
Yeah.
So we'll plan to do another one. Jonathan, if you're available, McRoy, if you're available to come, because it'll be back in the Wichita area, the same church, Paradise Baptist Church there. And honestly, it went really well. I was not sure what to expect. Quite frankly, I think we dodged a bullet. We had a good planning situation ahead of time. But it went well. I think by all accounts, it went well. So I was pleased with that. Did hire an intern, and we're starting the power mapping the Black community. The other thing I wanted to sort of bring to the group, so again, to think about, because we can't really like vote on anything, is that there is it's the, I don't know how to pronounce this, sesquicentennial, whatever, 250th birthday of America coming up. And Representative Susan Estes first contacted me about this last year. There is a group that's planning Kansas's celebration of the 250th anniversary, right? So this is they're doing, Kansas is going to throw a thing. And they are now starting to plan that in earnest. And they would like to involve KAAC, they would like to involve KAAC, they would like to involve, the Native American Affairs liaison, many different organizations around the state. And so they said they could either invite me or one of the commissioners. So as you know, say it with me now, raise the profile of the commission, raise the profile of the commissioners. It doesn't have to be me. So if one of you, and what I will do is I can forward all this out, the introductory emails, because they're going to start meeting. I have no clue what kind of birthday party they're going to plan for the state of Kansas to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the country, but they're starting to plan it, and they want to make sure that a lot of people are involved in that. So if you just have this burning desire to be involved with planning the 250th birthday of America, I'll let you do it, because if it's not going to be you, then it's going to be me. But this is not the Stacy show. Run, fly, be free.
Stacy, this is Commissioner McRoy. Is this going to be in Topeka, or have they decided where it's going to be held? Each state is going to hold it in their state capital, or what did they talk about?
That's an exceptionally good question. Let me pull up an email. The first meeting to discuss this, because they're at the point of just having meetings to discuss what it's going to look like, is going to be May 2nd, and that will be in Topeka. The Kansas Semi-Quincentennial Commission is charged with planning and implementing a series of events and experiences most fitting for our Kansas citizens to observe 250 years of achievements, events, trials that shaped our state and union, our nation. So right now, the members of the commission are the Department of Commerce Secretary, African American Affairs Commission, Hispanic Latino American Affairs Commissions, Native American Affairs Commissions, Daughter of the American Revolution, Sons of the American Revolution, Kansas Historical Foundation, the Kansas American Legions, the Kansas Veterans of Foreign Affairs. These are the people, these are all the commissions that they're trying to get one person from each of these. Kansas State Fair Board, American History of Public School Teacher appointee, someone appointed by the State Board of Education, and various people appointed by leadership of the legislature. So there's a whole list of there's about 15 people that they're trying to pull together for this commission to discuss the planning of it. So they haven't met yet. The first meeting will be May 2nd to even talk about what the plan is. And that meeting will be in Topeka.
Commissioner McRoy, can you send that out?
Yes, that was the plan to send. I was going to introduce it all to you and put it all in the notes and send it out. Yes. There you go. So that's pretty much it. It's even 3:30. We haven't even been here an hour, and I'm pretty much done. The only other thing, someone just emailed me a few days ago from the cultural programs director for Washburn. She's in charge of bringing in and curating events that focus on cultural diversity and inclusion. And this year she's hosting Washburn's first series of conversations. The event is called Washburn Hidden Voices, where I invite members of the Topeka community and Washburn University to discuss different topics. So she got my name from Danielle Dempsey Swopes. But again, I guess they're looking for Washburn, Topeka, more Topeka people. But if you know anybody in Topeka who might be good to talk about this, again, I can forward all this information to you as well. All right, I am truly done.
Hey, this is Commissioner McRoy. Real quick, Senator Pittman, I've been trying to get a hold of him to really ask him what's going on with that veterans tax bill. Seems like all of a sudden he doesn't want to respond to me, which is very strange. So I don't know if you have any more situational awareness on that.
I do not. Because do I have his? I'm like, do I have his personal phone number? Maybe I just give you his phone number, but I don't know if I have it.
Yeah, no, I would call him, but I think he'd be, I don't know, I've just emailed him a couple times and I feel like I'm just getting blown off, which is not cool. So maybe, I don't know if you'll see him or you're able to engage with him, but I just had some people asking me about that as well. And, I tried to ask him because, Senator Mary Ware said that, he has a lot of essay on that and I haven't been able to get a response.
This is Chairman McCormick. It's probably because the leadership has been focused on other issues, namely a lot of what I view as transphobic legislation aimed at children. We were trying to get a bill through the legislature ending juvenile fines and fees. It had traction on both sides of the aisle, but leadership just said, we're not going to do any criminal justice this session. And I have heard good things about the veterans effort that we were talking about. There's a lot of bipartisan support, but when the leadership decides what's going to be discussed and what's not going to get discussed, I think it fell into that latter category, Commissioner McRoy.
Hey, thanks, Mr. Chair.
Yes, sir.
I'm trying to see where that bill is. $2036, the one about the property tax exemption for retired and disabled vets. Is that what you're talking about, Jonathan?
That's correct.
Because at one point, okay. Committee on Assessment and Taxation. It passed. How do I find this information? Because at one point it was below the line, which meant that it had passed and it was just waiting to be voted on. But I don't know if it ever made it above the line.
So it's out of committee, but it should go to
which meant it was waiting to be voted on the floor, but it was what's called below the line, which means that it wasn't going to be voted. Like they only go through so much stuff, and that's what's above the line, and it was below the line, and so it could go above the line, you know, maybe. But they're on break now. I feel like I should be able to figure out where it is right now.
Well, Stacey, if you happen, this is Commissioner McCrory, if you happen to find anything, you can just send a message. That'll work. I'll try to engage with Leader Sawyer and see if I can get a more pointed answer from him as well.
That is not a bad idea. Okay. Sometimes navigating the Kansas legislature, like it's literally my job, and I'm like, how do I find out what's above the line? I mean, well, they're on break right now, so nothing's going on. Okay. I'll go back and look at that again. Last I heard it had passed and was on the floor waiting to be voted on, but I don't know if it actually got voted on.
Thanks.
Yes. All right. Anything else?
Yeah, this is Commissioner Westbrook. Director Nell, I am working with Groundworks NRG here in Walnut County in regards to our town hall with Rachel Jefferson. We're kind of like ironing out the details in regards to what that town hall is going to look like, but just we are looking to establish something here real soon. The issue that they're working towards is something to do with like the tax sales, and we just all got our appraisals, and it's a big issue here because they've skyrocketed significantly, and then you have an issue with folks who are retired, and it's really primarily affecting those in the African American communities who have fixed incomes and whatnot. So we are looking at building something out. So as soon as I get some of these details ironed out between what that town hall is going to look like, I'll be following up with you.
Fantastic. I love it. Okay. Anyone else? Any other announcements or anything like that? All right, I'll type up what notes we have, and I can send out all the information about the 250 anniversary thing in case one of you want to participate in that. And yes, that's it in a nutshell.
Great.
Have a wonderful Easter weekend. If you observe, happy Easter, and I will be in touch with everyone.
Super. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.